What's up, nerds? I'm Wes, Neverboard Gaming, and let's talk about the latest game in the Tiny Epic line, Tiny Epic Tactics from Gambling Games. So Tiny Epic Tactics has a few different ways that you can play. There's a 2 to 4 player competitive mode, there's a 2v2, there's a 2-player cooperative game, there's a 1-player solo adventure, and there's also a 2 to 4 player battle mode. For the purpose of this review, we're just going to talk about the 2 to 4 player competitive mode because that is like the main game that they have here. That's the one that we previewed for the Kickstarter. And I think that's the one that most people think about when they think of this game. So the competitive mode is essentially like a King of the Hill experience where you actually have 3 different zones on the board that you want to control for a certain amount of time. So every team is essentially like a party, and there's 4 units in the party: a fighter, a beast, a rogue, and a wizard. And there's a whole deck of these cards where you can shuffle and deal them out randomly. You can try to like team build a little bit if you want. But each of these units on your team has its own abilities, its own way to play, but each character type has some similarities. So like the fighters all have a ranged and a melee attack. The beasts are all like super beefy and do really heavy damage. The rogues all have like a stronger ranged attack, although they do have a melee attack. And then the wizards all have magic that they can use to cast spells on things. On your turn, you do get 3 moves to make. So even though you have 4 people, you can only choose to activate 3 of them on a turn, which can get kind of difficult because you don't want to leave a guy behind, but you also don't want to like stall out moving forward. So I definitely found myself leaving a guy behind a lot of times, or like I get my archer up to a spot where he had like a really big reach. Like you can get him on a mountain and he can shoot almost anywhere, which is really beneficial because you can get him up there and then move the rest of your party around together and only activate him if you really are ready to do some damage. So the way the King of the Hill works is you've got, again, the 3 zones on the board that trigger, and there's like a trigger spot on that zone. If you have a character on that trigger spot at the start of your turn, it basically starts the timer, and each zone has a timer of 3 rounds to beat it. So you've got the flags that move up and down, or not down, they just move up this track. And they move every time somebody has majority control of an area or the most units in that area at the start of their turn. So you have to get the most and then maintain the most until your turn again. And that can get a little tricky because a lot of the characters have like knockback with their melees, where if they hit you, they can actually push you off of your space. So you can like get moved off of a zone that you had majority of. But at the start of your turn, if you have majority control of that area, you move this flag up. And then once it gets to the round 3, which is you control it, you get to take this flag and it's worth 5 points at the end of the game. What gets really tricky is that it doesn't reset if somebody loses control. So I could have control of a zone for the first 2 rounds. I get pushed off it, somebody else moves onto it, I'm not able to take it back, and then they've controlled the zone for only 1 round, but they still get the 5 points that I've spent like a large portion of the game fighting over. So that's the main way you get points, is by controlling the 3 zones. The other way you can get points is by killing other characters. Each other character that you kill off gives you 2 points. So there is some incentive just to like kill people off, and it doesn't just weaken that team, but you do get points for it. Throughout the game, you also have these tactics cards in hand that basically have like if-then statements on it. So if you do this, then you get this reward, or then you can do this thing. That adds like a nice little like mini incentive in the game. It helps direct your strategy a little bit. If you don't know what to do, you can try to get your card to trigger and make sure that the thing that it does is really beneficial for you. So right off the bat, Tiny Epic Tactics is definitely not going to be one of Neverboard Gaming's like top Tiny Epic games. We thought it was fine, but overall it was a little bit lackluster for us. The concept, super cool. The 3D environment, awesome. I love that like it affected range, and the higher you are, the farther you can shoot, and like it costs more to move up and through water. Like it could have been achieved without all the 3-dimensional tiers, but again, packing all of this into a box this size. Like, how cool is that? Obviously, the playmat wasn't packed in there as well. That, super, super awesome. I loved having all the parties. I loved the different abilities they had. The combat was really cool because it used dice combat, but it wasn't like other dice combat, because rolling the dice, like, one, depending on what weapon, like the magic, rolling the dice could like make it a bigger effect or a lesser effect, or the range, you're guaranteed to get the shot, but the dice let you know what it actually costs you, because you've got your track of arrows, but the dice, like, that shot could have cost you 3, could have cost you 1. If you can't afford it, then the shot might fail, so you're kind of rolling the dice on that one. But I really appreciated the dice combat. I think that the biggest thing that this game was lacking for me was, if you're not playing a 4-player game and you've got 3 zones that you're going for, well, in a 3-player game, you each just go for a zone. Like, whoever gets to a zone first and triggers it, like, obviously they're a target, but you also want to be working on your own zone as well. And if each team is just working on their own little zone, then, like, nothing's going to happen in the game. You're just going to sit there on your own spot. So, like, obviously you want to, like, put 1 or 2 guys to take majority of one zone and send your other 2 guys to go attack another zone. And then if you're attacking a zone, they may hold more guys back, and then that 3rd player is just kind of sitting there winning that area. In every game we played, it seemed like most of the time it was 2 players fighting and 1 person kind of hanging back, and no one was really bothering them. Now, in a 4-player game, it's all different, because you've got 3 zones and 4 teams. So there's a lot more fighting, there's a lot more struggle, because, like, you don't have, like, well, I'm going to take this one, you're going to take that one, and you're going to take that one. I think that could be fixed in, like, if a 3-player game you only had 2 zones, or in a 2-player game you only had 1 zone. I haven't play tested enough to know if it, like, is broken that way necessarily. It felt like there's almost too much space at a lower team count. Now, there also was a really cool, like I said, like, solo game and cooperative game where you actually, like, can go inside these buildings, and if you look inside of them, like, there's stuff in there, so you can go inside and collect stuff. Now, I haven't actually played that enough to really comment on it, but I do, like, I want to play that. Maybe we'll bring you guys more coverage about that aspect of the game if it changes my overall opinion. And now, I've never really had a negative opinion of a Tiny Epic game. I think they're all awesome. I have every single one. I've been a backer. Even before, like, Nevermore Gaming was a thing, I was backing Tiny Epic Kingdoms when it first made it to Kickstarter. And this one, again, it's an enjoyable game. It's pleasant. But when I'm comparing it to, like, Tiny Epic Quest and Tiny Epic West and Tiny Epic Galaxies, like, this one just doesn't stand up to those. Does it have some cool stuff going on? Absolutely. Am I happy to play it again? Absolutely. Am I happy to own it? Sure. I'm going to keep it. I'm not going to get rid of it. But it definitely wouldn't be the first Tiny Epic that I would recommend to you. However, if you are a Tiny Epic completionist, or if what I was describing sounds like a really fun experience to you, I am going to put a purchase link in the description box down below where you can get yourself a copy. And while you're down there, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you'll never be bored.